In Buddhist teachings, attachment to the ego, chupna, is one of the primary causes of suffering. The ego refers to the clinging to the idea of self, to the belief in personal existence, and the emotions and thoughts tied to it. This leads to separation, opposition, and conflict between oneself and the surrounding world. Letting go of the ego is a fundamental step toward enlightenment and liberation. Suffering from attachment to the ego. When we believe that we are a separate entity, distinct from all things, desires, anger, and delusion arise. Each time the self feels hurt, anger flares up. When something seems beneficial, greed takes over. And when we lack clear understanding, we fall into confusion. This is the root of suffering, which Buddhism refers to as the Four Noble Truths, where the cause of suffering lies in craving and attachment to the ego. The attachment to the ego creates a barrier between people and the world, causing anxiety about loss, a constant pursuit of fame, wealth, and material possessions, leading to internal conflict. When controlled by the ego, we easily fall into the turmoil of life, with endless delusions arising. This prevents the mind from finding true peace, leaving it in a constant state of unrest, anxiety, and dissatisfaction. Letting go of the ego, the path to liberation. According to Buddhism, to attain liberation, we must let go of the ego. This does not mean denying the existence of the self, but realizing that the self is a temporary collection of the five aggregates: form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. These elements have no permanent nature and are merely phenomena arising and ceasing due to causes and conditions. Understanding this, we see that clinging to the self is clinging to an illusion. The Buddha taught that the path to letting go of the ego is through practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, which includes right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Practicing mindfulness allows us to see things clearly without being swayed by emotions and delusions. Right concentration keeps the mind stable and unmoved by the ups and downs of the world. Benefits of letting go of the ego. When we let go of the ego, our mind becomes more peaceful and serene. Without attachment to the self, we no longer feel hurt or anxious about loss or the changes in life. Inner peace and tranquility naturally arise. At that point, we live in harmony with everything around us, without opposition or conflict, but with understanding and compassion. Letting go of the ego not only brings happiness to ourselves, but also allows us to become a source of benefit to others. Compassion and tolerance naturally arise when we stop focusing too much on ourselves and instead live for the common good of the community, sharing and helping those around us. Conclusion. Letting go of the ego is a difficult path, but in Buddhist teachings, compassion is one of the fundamental virtues and a means to lead all beings out of suffering and toward enlightenment. Compassion is the love, care, and desire for all beings to be happy, without discrimination between friend or foe, near or far, or social status. Compassion provides the strength to overcome selfishness and fear, helping people live peacefully and harmoniously with everything around them. Compassion, the strength to overcome suffering. Suffering in life stems from many factors such as greed, anger, delusion, and ignorance. These emotions lead people to live in anxiety, sorrow, and opposition to one another. The Buddha taught that compassion is an effective remedy for these sufferings. When we expand our compassion, we are no longer affected by negative emotions, but instead, our hearts become peaceful, calm, and happy. Compassion is not only about love, but also about the willingness to forgive and be tolerant. When we practice compassion, we no longer hold on to hatred or resentment, but develop empathy for others' difficulties and mistakes. This helps us to free ourselves from the bonds of anger and build better relationships with those around us. Cultivating compassion through practice. Compassion is not something that arises naturally. It must be cultivated and nurtured over time. The Buddha advised us to practice the four immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity. These are the four noble qualities that help us overcome selfishness, opening our hearts to love all beings unconditionally. Loving kindness means wishing for all beings to be happy. Compassion is the desire to alleviate the suffering of others. Empathetic joy is the happiness we feel when others are happy. And equanimity is the letting go of attachment to personal emotions. Practicing compassion also involves mindfulness. Mindfulness helps us to be aware and deeply understand our emotions and thoughts. When compassion is nurtured, negative emotions such as greed and anger will gradually dissolve, making room for love and peace. The benefits of compassion in life. Compassion not only brings benefits to ourselves, but also to those around us. When someone lives with compassion, they become approachable, tolerant, and gentle. Compassion helps us face the challenges and difficulties of life with more ease, without being swept away by worry or anxiety. It also helps us build better relationships with family, friends, and the community. The Buddha taught that when we develop compassion, we not only reduce suffering for ourselves, but also spread happiness to others. A world where everyone lives with compassion would be one free from war, violence, and hatred. Compassion is the foundation for lasting peace and happiness. Conclusion. Compassion is a noble and essential quality in the Buddhist path of practice. It not only helps people free themselves from suffering, but also brings true peace and happiness.